The Mediterranean sun blazed mercilessly overhead as Marcus Rivera wiped the sweat from his forehead with a grease-stained rag. His weathered hands trembled slightly as he stared at the pristine white yacht bobbing gently in the exclusive Monaco harbor. The vessel was a masterpiece of engineering, 90 feet of gleaming fiberglass and chrome that probably cost more than he would earn in 10 lifetimes. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Nobody can fix this yacht! The laughter rang out sharp and cruel across the marina. Victoria Ashworth stood on the dock, her designer heels clicking against the wooden planks as she gestured dismissively toward Marcus. Her silk blouse caught the breeze, and diamonds sparkled at her throat like captured starlight. Daddy's engineers from Switzerland couldn't figure it out. The best marine mechanics in Monaco threw up their hands. What makes you think so? She paused, her eyes scanning Marcus's worn coveralls and calloused hands. Some handyman can accomplish what they couldn't. Marcus felt the familiar burn of humiliation rise in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. His 8-year-old daughter Sofia waited in their tiny apartment just blocks away from this world of unimaginable wealth, and the electricity bill was 3 days overdue. "Ma'am, I just need the work. I've been fixing boats since I was 12 years old. Maybe I can take a look, see what's wrong." Victoria's perfectly manicured eyebrows arched in amusement. She turned to the small crowd of marina staff and wealthy yacht owners who had gathered to witness the spectacle. "Did you hear that? He thinks he can solve the mystery of the Serafina in an afternoon." Her voice carried across the water, drawing more curious onlookers. "The engines won't start, the navigation system is completely dead, and there's some kind of electrical fault that's baffled everyone who's touched it. But sure, let's see what magic this man can work." Marcus had arrived at the Monaco harbor before dawn, clutching a crumpled newspaper clipping that advertised emergency repair work for luxury vessels. The pay was good, better than anything he'd found in months, and desperation had driven him to walk the 12 miles from his cramped apartment in the working-class district to this playground of the ultra-wealthy. He had been a different man once. Dr. Marcus Rivera, professor of marine engineering at the Barcelona Maritime Institute, had been one of Spain's most respected naval architects. His designs had revolutionized eco-friendly shipping, and his research on sustainable marine propulsion systems had earned him international recognition. But that life felt like it belonged to someone else now, someone who hadn't watched his wife Elena waste away in a hospital bed while medical bills consumed their savings, someone who hadn't been forced to choose between funding her experimental treatments and maintaining his academic position. The Serafina loomed before him now, a monument to excess that somehow mocked everything he had once stood for. Victoria Ashworth paced the dock, her phone pressed to her ear as she spoke in rapid French to what sounded like another disappointing marine specialist. She was younger than he had expected, perhaps in her early 30s, with auburn hair that caught the sunlight and green eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was wrapped in layers of privilege and disdain that made her seem as untouchable as the yacht itself. "The Serafina hasn't moved in 6 weeks," she was saying to her caller, unaware that Marcus could understand every word. "Every so-called expert in Europe has looked at it, and they all leave with the same confused expression. The electrical systems are completely haywire, but none of the diagnostic equipment can pinpoint the problem. It's like the boat is possessed." Marcus studied the yacht's sleek lines, noting the subtle modifications that set it apart from standard luxury vessels. The hull design suggested hybrid propulsion, possibly one of the new experimental systems he had read about in maritime journals. If he was right, the problem might not be mechanical at all, but rather a software integration issue that traditional marine mechanics wouldn't recognize. Sofia's face flashed in his mind, her dark eyes wide with worry as she asked why they had to eat cereal for dinner again. She never complained, never demanded explanations for their reduced circumstances, but Marcus saw the questions building behind her patient smile. At 8 years old, she was already learning to make herself smaller, to want less, to expect disappointment. The thought made his chest tighten with a familiar ache. "I'll give you 2 hours," Victoria announced suddenly, ending her call and turning to face Marcus with the air of someone granting an enormous favor. "If you can get the Serafina running, I'll pay you 5,000 euros. But when you fail, I don't want to hear any excuses about needing more time or different parts. 2 hours, and then you disappear. €5,000. The number hit Marcus like a physical blow. It would cover Sofia's school fees for the rest of the year, pay their overdue bills, and maybe even allow them to move to a slightly larger apartment. But more than that, it would give him a chance to prove that he was still capable of something beyond desperation and failure. "I'll need access to the engine room and the bridge," he said quietly, his voice betraying none of the hope that suddenly blazed in his chest. "And I'll need you to keep everyone else away from the boat while I work." Victoria's laugh was like breaking crystal. "Oh, this is rich. You're actually serious." She glanced around at the growing crowd of spectators, all drawn by the unfolding drama. "Fine. Consider it entertainment. Maybe we'll finally solve the mystery of why the Serafina refuses to cooperate." As Marcus climbed aboard the yacht, he felt the familiar thrill of being surrounded by sophisticated machinery. The Serafina's deck was immaculate, every surface polished to mirror brightness. Through the large windows, he could see the luxurious interior, all cream leather and dark wood. But his attention was focused on the subtle hum of electrical systems, and the almost imperceptible vibration that suggested the boat's power grid was active but unstable. The engine room was a cathedral of technology. Twin hybrid engines flanked by banks of computers and monitoring systems that most mechanics would find overwhelming. But Marcus recognized the setup immediately. This wasn't just a luxury yacht. It was a prototype, one of perhaps 3 vessels in the world equipped with the experimental Poseidon propulsion system he had helped design 5 years earlier. His breath caught as the implications hit him. The Poseidon system required a specific initialization sequence, one that wasn't documented in any manual because the technology was still classified. The original design team had scattered after the project was shelved due to funding cuts, and the knowledge of how to properly calibrate the system existed in the minds of perhaps a dozen people worldwide. Marcus was one of them. The irony was almost overwhelming. Victoria Ashworth had unknowingly challenged the one man in Monaco who actually understood her boat's unique systems. But recognizing the problem and solving it were 2 different things. The Poseidon system was notoriously finicky, and any number of factors could have caused the cascade failure that had left the Serafina dead in the water. He began his work methodically, tracing power flows and checking connection points with the practiced efficiency of someone who had spent years perfecting his craft. The yacht's diagnostic systems were state-of-the-art, but they had been designed for conventional marine engines. They couldn't interpret the Poseidon system's feedback loops, which was why every previous mechanic had left empty-handed. Above deck, Victoria paced with increasing agitation. The crowd had grown larger, and Marcus could hear fragments of conversation drifting down through the ventilation system. Bets were being placed on whether he would succeed, with odds heavily favoring failure. Several people seemed to know Victoria personally, and their comments ranged from sympathetic to mocking. "Your father will have to sell the Serafina if no one can fix it," someone observed. "Shame, really. It's such a beautiful vessel." "Maybe it's cursed," another voice suggested with obvious amusement. "Rich people's problems, right? Most of us would be thrilled to have a broken yacht." Marcus tried to block out the commentary and focus on his work, but the pressure was building with each passing minute. He had found the source of the electrical fault, a cascading failure in the power management system that had locked the engines in a safety mode. The solution required reprogramming the control computers, but he would need to access administrative functions that were password protected. He closed his eyes and tried to remember the default codes from the Poseidon project. The lead programmer had been a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, and she had always used combinations based on marine mythology. Marcus's fingers moved across the keyboard as he tried various permutations of names and numbers, each failed attempt bringing him closer to his 2-hour deadline. Outside, Victoria's voice carried a note of triumph as she announced to her audience, "1 hour left, and I haven't heard a single engine turn over. This is exactly what I expected." Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. The password had to be something memorable but not obvious, something that would appeal to Dr. Chen's sense of humor. He thought back to their late-night debugging sessions, remembering her fascination with oceanic legends and her collection of vintage maritime maps. Then it hit him. Triton 7, named after Poseidon's son and the year the project had been initiated. His fingers flew across the keyboard, and suddenly the screens around him blazed to life with diagnostic information and control options he hadn't seen in years. The Poseidon system was designed to run a complete self-diagnostic before initialization, a process that normally took 15 minutes. Marcus watched the progress bars crawl across multiple screens, each one representing a different subsystem coming online. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Power management, propulsion control, navigation integration, environmental monitoring, all the cutting-edge technologies that had made the Poseidon project so promising and so expensive. With 10 minutes remaining in his allotted time, the diagnostics completed successfully. Marcus held his breath as he initiated the startup sequence, listening for the distinctive harmonic hum that indicated the hybrid engines were synchronizing properly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like distant thunder, the Serafina's engines roared to life. The yacht shuddered slightly as its systems came online, and Marcus could hear surprised exclamations from the crowd above. He quickly ran through the final calibration steps, adjusting fuel mixture and power distribution to optimize performance. The Serafina was now running better than it probably had since leaving the shipyard. Marcus climbed back onto the deck to find Victoria staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. The yacht's engines purred smoothly in the background, and the navigation displays visible through the bridge windows showed all systems functioning normally. The crowd had fallen silent, their earlier mockery replaced by obvious amazement. "How?" Victoria's voice was barely above a whisper. Every expert we consulted said it would take weeks to diagnose the problem, if it could be fixed at all. Marcus wiped his hands on his coveralls, suddenly aware of how out of place he looked, surrounded by designer clothing and manicured luxury. Sometimes you need someone who understands the specific systems involved. Your yacht uses some very specialized technology. Victoria studied his face as if seeing him for the first time. "You're not just a handyman, are you?" Before Marcus could answer, a commotion erupted on the dock. A man in an expensive suit was pushing through the crowd, his face flushed with anger or excitement. "Victoria! What's all this noise?" I could hear the engines from the harbor master's office. The man who approached was clearly Victoria's father, sharing her green eyes and aristocratic bearing, but carrying himself with the additional weight of age and authority. His graying hair was perfectly styled, and his watch probably cost more than Marcus's annual rent. "Daddy, this man fixed the Serafina," Victoria said, gesturing toward Marcus with a mixture of confusion and reluctant respect. "It took him less than 2 hours." Richard Ashworth's eyes narrowed as he studied Marcus. "Impossible. We've had teams from 3 different countries look at that boat." The head of marine engineering at MIT said the electrical systems were completely incompatible. "The engines are running," Victoria pointed out, as if her father might have missed the obvious evidence. Whatever he did, it worked. Marcus felt the weight of their attention and tried to shrink back toward the yacht's railing. This was the moment he had been dreading, when his temporary success would invite questions he wasn't prepared to answer. The 5,000 euros suddenly seemed like a distant dream as he imagined trying to explain his background without revealing too much about his past. "What's your name?" Richard Ashworth demanded, stepping closer to Marcus with the aggressive posture of someone accustomed to getting immediate answers. "Marcus Rivera," he replied quietly, hoping the conversation would end there. But Richard's expression changed suddenly, as if the name had triggered some half-remembered association. "Rivera. Marcus Rivera." He paused, his eyes widening slightly. "You're not the Dr. Marcus Rivera who designed the Poseidon propulsion system, are you?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, and Marcus felt his carefully constructed anonymity crumbling around him. Every face in the crowd was turned toward him now, waiting for his response. Victoria looked particularly stunned, as if she were trying to reconcile the distinguished academic her father was describing with the desperate man in coveralls standing before her. Marcus straightened his shoulders, feeling both the pride and pain of acknowledgement. "I was," he said simply. "But that was a long time ago." The crowd erupted in excited murmurs, and Marcus caught fragments of astonished conversation. The name was apparently familiar to several of the yacht owners present, men and women who followed marine technology the way others tracked sports statistics. He heard someone mention prestigious awards, groundbreaking research, innovations that had influenced modern shipbuilding. Victoria stared at him with undisguised amazement. "You designed the system in my yacht." But why are you... what are you doing here? The question was asked without malice, but it still cut deep. Marcus looked out over the harbor, where million-dollar vessels bobbed gently in the afternoon sun. Then, back at his own reflection in the yacht's polished surfaces. How could he explain the cascade of circumstances that had brought him from academic success to desperate poverty? How could he make them understand the weight of medical bills and impossible choices, and the grinding exhaustion of watching everything he had worked for slip away? Life happened, he said finally, his voice carrying years of accumulated pain. Sometimes things don't go according to plan. Richard Ashworth studied Marcus with new interest, his initial suspicion replaced by something approaching respect. The Poseidon Project was revolutionary. I read the papers, followed the development. What happened to it? Marcus felt old wounds reopening, but he forced himself to answer. Funding was pulled, the technology was sound, but it was expensive to implement, and there were political considerations. The project team was disbanded, and the research was classified. But you kept working on it, Victoria said, her voice softer now. The Serafina's systems are more advanced than anything in the original specifications. Marcus nodded reluctantly. I continued the research on my own time, tried to solve some of the integration problems we had encountered. But without institutional support, progress was slow. What changed? Richard asked. Why did you stop? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow, bringing back memories he had spent years trying to suppress. Elena's face flashed through his mind, pale and drawn during those final weeks. Her hand weak in his as she made him promise to take care of Sofia. The experimental treatments had cost everything they owned and more, draining their savings and forcing him to mortgage their future against the faint hope of a miracle that never came. My wife was diagnosed with cancer, Marcus said quietly, his voice barely audible over the yacht's idling engines. The treatments weren't covered by insurance. I had to choose between my research and her care. The crowd fell silent, and Marcus saw something shift in Victoria's expression. The casual cruelty that had marked her earlier comments was gone, replaced by a discomfort that suggested she wasn't entirely heartless, merely sheltered from the harsh realities that shaped most people's lives. I'm sorry, she said, and for the first time her voice carried genuine emotion. She died 3 years ago, Marcus replied, surprised by his ability to say the words without breaking. I have a daughter now, Sofia. She's 8. Richard Ashworth cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the personal turn the conversation had taken. Dr. Rivera, I think we need to talk. Privately. He gestured toward the yacht's main cabin. Victoria, why don't you show our guest to the salon? I have some calls to make. As they moved toward the yacht's interior, Marcus caught sight of his own reflection in the polished glass doors. He looked older than his 42 years, worn down by circumstances and responsibility. His dark hair was streaked with premature gray, and lines of worry had etched themselves around his eyes. It was hard to believe that this tired man had once been considered one of Europe's most promising marine engineers. The Serafina's main salon was a study in understated luxury, all cream leather and polished wood with subtle lighting that made everything glow with warmth. Victoria moved through the space with unconscious grace, clearly at home among the expensive furnishings. She poured herself a glass of sparkling water from a built-in bar and offered one to Marcus, who accepted it gratefully. I owe you an apology, Victoria said suddenly, settling into one of the leather chairs with her drink cradled in both hands. What I said earlier, the way I treated you, it was inexcusable. Marcus studied her face, surprised by the apparent sincerity of her words. You didn't know who I was. That's no excuse, Victoria replied firmly. I shouldn't have treated anyone that way, regardless of their background. My father raised me better than that. She paused, looking out through the yacht's large windows at the harbor beyond. Sometimes this world makes you forget that other people have real problems, real struggles. It's easy to assume that everyone who approaches us wants something. Most people probably do want something, Marcus observed, not unkindly. Money has a way of attracting attention. Victoria's laugh was rueful. That's certainly true. But you weren't here asking for handouts or trying to charm your way into our lives. You were just looking for work, For a chance to provide for your daughter. She met his eyes directly. That's admirable, Dr. Rivera. More admirable than anything I've done lately. Before Marcus could respond, Richard Ashworth returned from making his calls, his expression thoughtful and businesslike. He settled into a chair across from Marcus and studied him with the calculating gaze of someone accustomed to making important decisions quickly. Dr. Rivera, I've been making some inquiries about your current situation, Richard began, his tone carefully neutral. It seems you've been working various maintenance jobs around Monaco for the past year, nothing that makes use of your considerable expertise. Marcus felt a familiar flush of embarrassment. I take whatever work I can find. I have responsibilities. Indeed you do, Richard agreed. And from what I understand, you've been meeting those responsibilities despite considerable challenges. Your daughter's school speaks very highly of both of you. The revelation that Richard had somehow contacted Sofia's school in the past hour was both impressive and unsettling. Marcus wondered what else the man had discovered about their circumstances. What other private details had been exposed to scrutiny? I have a proposition for you, Richard continued, leaning forward in his chair. The Ashworth Maritime Group is developing a new line of eco-friendly luxury vessels. We need someone with your expertise to head up the engineering division, someone who understands both the technical challenges and the environmental imperatives. Marcus stared at him, certain he had misunderstood. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a career, Richard corrected. Full salary, benefits, research budget, and complete autonomy over the technical aspects of the project. We're talking about revolutionary vessels that could transform the luxury marine industry. The offer was everything Marcus had dreamed of during his darkest moments, a chance to return to meaningful work and provide real security for Sofia. But years of disappointment had taught him to be cautious about opportunities that seemed too good to be true. Why? He asked simply. You don't know anything about me, beyond what happened today. Richard smiled, the expression transforming his stern features. Dr. Rivera, you accomplished in 2 hours what teams of experts couldn't manage in 6 weeks. More importantly, you did it while carrying the weight of personal tragedy and financial hardship that would have broken most people. That tells me everything I need to know about your character and capabilities. Victoria had been silent during her father's offer, but now she spoke up with obvious enthusiasm. You could work on vessels like the Serafina, push the boundaries of what's possible. Imagine what you could accomplish with unlimited resources and a team of the best marine engineers in the world. Marcus felt tears threatening and had to look away to maintain his composure. After years of rejection and desperation, the sudden reversal of fortune was almost overwhelming. But beneath the gratitude and relief, practical concerns began to surface. I would need to consider Sofia's schooling, our living situation, he began, but Richard waved away his concerns. All taken care of. We'll provide housing, education, whatever you need to make the transition comfortable. Your daughter's welfare is obviously your priority, and it will be ours as well. There's one condition, Victoria added, her green eyes sparkling with mischief. You have to let me work with you on the first project. I want to learn about the technical side of the business, and I can't think of a better teacher. Marcus looked between father and daughter, still struggling to process the dramatic change in his circumstances. A few hours ago, he had been a desperate man, hoping for enough work to pay his bills. Now he was being offered a chance to rebuild his career and provide a secure future for Sofia. I accept, he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you. Both of you. As the sun began to set over Monaco harbor, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Marcus stood on the Serafina's deck and called Sofia to share the news. Her excited squeals of delight carried across the water, drawing smiles from the wealthy yacht owners who had gathered to witness his earlier triumph. Victoria joined him at the railing, her earlier arrogance replaced by genuine warmth. Your daughter sounds wonderful, she said after Marcus ended the call. She's everything to me, Marcus replied, looking out over the harbor where his new life was about to begin. She's the reason I keep going, the reason I never give up. I'd like to meet her, Victoria said softly. If that's appropriate, I think I could learn a lot from both of you about what really matters in life. As the lights began to twinkle across the harbor, and the Seraphina rocked gently in the evening breeze, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope, not just for survival, but for a future where his talents could flourish, and his daughter could grow up without the shadow of poverty hanging over their dreams. The yacht that no one could fix had become the vessel that carried them toward a new beginning, and Marcus silently thanked Elena for watching over them both, knowing she would be proud of how far they had come. The Ashworth Maritime headquarters rose like a glass cathedral from the cliffs overlooking Monaco's eastern harbor, its sleek architecture a testament to decades of maritime innovation and accumulated wealth. Marcus Rivera stood before the imposing structure at precisely 8 in the morning, wearing his only decent suit and carrying a briefcase that had once belonged to his late wife. The leather was worn but well-maintained, and inside were his research notes, sketches, and the few academic papers he had managed to preserve through years of upheaval. 3 months had passed since the day at the harbor when everything changed. The transition had been smoother than Marcus had dared to hope, with Richard Ashworth proving true to his word about providing housing and support for Sofia's education. They now lived in a modest but comfortable apartment overlooking the Mediterranean, and Sofia attended one of Monaco's finest international schools. The change in her demeanor had been remarkable, her natural brightness flowering under the security of knowing they would have food on the table and a warm place to sleep. The elevator carried Marcus to the executive floor, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the harbor below. He could see the Seraphina in her berth, now fully operational and serving as both a reminder of his capabilities and a symbol of possibilities yet to be explored. Victoria had taken the yacht out several times since their first meeting, often returning with detailed questions about its systems and performance characteristics that demonstrated her growing understanding of marine engineering. Richard Ashworth's office occupied the entire corner of the building, with nautical charts covering one wall and scale models of various vessels displayed throughout the space. The man himself was studying a set of blueprints when Marcus arrived, his silver hair catching the morning sunlight streaming through the windows. "Dr. Rivera, punctual as always," Richard said, looking up with approval. "I trust Sofia is settling in well at her new school." "She loves it," Marcus replied, still somewhat overwhelmed by the dramatic improvement in their circumstances. "The science program is particularly strong, and she's already talking about wanting to study marine biology." "Following in her father's footsteps, perhaps," Richard observed with a smile, "though I suspect she'll have even more opportunities than you did at her age." Victoria entered the office carrying 2 cups of coffee and a tablet displaying what appeared to be technical specifications. She had traded her designer clothes for practical work attire, though she still managed to look elegant in navy slacks and a crisp white shirt. Over the past months, she had thrown herself into learning about marine engineering with the same intensity she had once applied to social events and charity galas. "I've been reviewing the preliminary designs for the Aurora class," she announced, settling into a chair across from Marcus. "The hybrid propulsion system looks promising, but I have questions about the power management integration." Marcus accepted one of the coffees gratefully, noting how Victoria's vocabulary had evolved to include technical terminology that would have been foreign to her just months earlier. She was proving to be a surprisingly quick study, with an intuitive grasp of complex systems that complemented her business acumen. "The power management is the most challenging aspect," Marcus agreed, pulling out his own notes. "We're essentially trying to create a seamless interface between 3 different energy sources: traditional marine diesel, electric batteries, and solar collection arrays. Each system has its own optimal operating parameters, and coordinating them requires sophisticated software." Richard leaned back in his chair, watching the exchange with obvious satisfaction. "This is exactly why I wanted both of you working on this project. Victoria brings fresh perspective and business insight, while Dr. Rivera provides the technical expertise we need to make it viable." The Aurora class represented Richard's vision for the future of luxury yachting, vessels that combined environmental responsibility with uncompromising performance and comfort. The initial designs called for a series of yachts ranging from 60 to 150 feet, each equipped with Marcus's advanced hybrid propulsion systems and cutting-edge environmental monitoring equipment. "The market research is encouraging," Victoria reported, consulting her tablet. "There's significant demand among high-net-worth individuals for luxury vessels that align with their environmental values. Several potential clients have already expressed interest based on our preliminary specifications." Marcus nodded, though he couldn't quite suppress a smile at how naturally Victoria had adapted to discussing market demographics and client preferences. The transformation from privileged socialite to engaged businesswoman had been remarkable to witness, and he found himself genuinely enjoying their collaborative work sessions. "There's something else we need to discuss," Richard said, his expression becoming more serious. "I've been in contact with representatives from the European Maritime Safety Agency. They're interested in our hybrid technology for potential commercial applications." The implications hit Marcus immediately. Commercial adoption would mean mass production, widespread implementation of environmental technologies, and influence over an entire industry's evolution towards sustainability. It was the kind of impact he had dreamed of during his academic career, the opportunity to effect meaningful change on a global scale. "What kind of timeline are they considering?" Marcus asked, his mind already racing through the technical challenges of scaling up their designs. "That depends on our ability to demonstrate viability," Richard replied. "They want to see a fully functional prototype, something that proves the technology works reliably under real-world conditions." Victoria leaned forward, her green eyes bright with excitement. "We could use the Serafina as our test platform. She's already equipped with the basic systems, and we could retrofit her with the latest improvements." "Actually," Richard said, reaching for a folder on his desk, "I have a different idea." He spread out architectural drawings for a vessel unlike anything Marcus had seen before. The design was sleek and futuristic, with clean lines that suggested both speed and efficiency. Solar panels were integrated seamlessly into the superstructure, and the hull design incorporated several innovative features that would minimize environmental impact while maximizing performance. "The Aurora prototype," Richard announced. 100 feet of cutting-edge technology, designed specifically to showcase what's possible when engineering excellence meets environmental consciousness. Marcus studied the drawings with growing amazement. The design incorporated many of his theoretical improvements to the Poseidon system, refinements he had only dreamed of implementing. The power management systems were elegant in their sophistication, and the environmental controls suggested a level of efficiency that would have been impossible just a few years earlier. "This is incredible," he breathed, tracing the lines of the hull with one finger. The hydrodynamics alone would represent a significant advancement in marine architecture. "How long would it take to build?" Victoria asked, already thinking about project timelines and market positioning. Richard's expression grew more serious. "That's where things get complicated. The European Maritime Safety Agency wants to see our prototype within 18 months. That's an aggressive timeline for a vessel of this complexity, and will need to coordinate with shipyards, suppliers, and regulatory agencies across multiple countries." Marcus felt the familiar thrill of a significant engineering challenge, the same excitement that had driven him through his doctoral research and early academic career. But beneath the enthusiasm lay practical concerns about the magnitude of what they were proposing. "We'll need a dedicated team," he said thoughtfully. "Naval architects, systems engineers, environmental specialists, software developers. And we'll need access to advanced manufacturing facilities for the more sophisticated components." "Already arranged," Richard replied with the confidence of someone accustomed to making impossible things happen. "I've been quietly assembling resources for months, waiting for the right moment to move forward. The question is whether you're ready to lead the technical development." The weight of responsibility settled on Marcus's shoulders like a familiar coat. This was what he had trained for, prepared for throughout his academic career. But it was also far more complex and high stakes than anything he had attempted before. The success or failure of the Aurora prototype could determine the future direction of an entire industry. "I'm ready," he said quietly, meeting Richard's gaze directly. "But I'll need complete autonomy over the technical aspects, and I'll want Victoria involved in every major decision." Victoria looked surprised and pleased by his inclusion of her in the leadership structure. Over the past months, she had proven herself to be more than just Richard's daughter, learning the family business. Her insights often provided valuable perspective that Marcus's purely technical background might have missed. "Consider it done," Richard agreed. "Dr. Rivera, you'll head the technical development team with complete authority over engineering decisions. Victoria will serve as project coordinator, handling logistics and interfacing with our external partners." As they spent the next several hours reviewing technical specifications and project timelines, Marcus found himself energized in a way he hadn't experienced since his university days. The Aurora represented everything he had hoped to accomplish through his research. Meaningful innovation that could benefit both human civilization and environmental preservation. The challenges were enormous. They would need to integrate systems that had never been combined before, solve engineering problems that existed at the very edge of current technology, and do it all within a timeline that would test the limits of what was humanly possible. But for the first time in years, Marcus felt genuinely optimistic about the future. Late that afternoon, as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, Marcus and Victoria stood on the building's observation deck, looking out over the harbor where their prototype would eventually take its maiden voyage. The Serafina bobbed gently at her mooring, a reminder of how far they had already come. "Are you nervous?" Victoria asked, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty that she rarely displayed. Marcus considered the question carefully. "Terrified," he admitted. "But also more excited than I've been in years. This is the kind of work I dreamed of doing when I first fell in love with marine engineering." "What got you interested in boats in the first place?" Victoria asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Marcus smiled at the memory. "My grandfather was a fisherman in Barcelona. When I was Sofia's age, he would take me out on his boat early in the morning before the tourists arrived. The ocean was completely different then, peaceful and mysterious. He taught me to read the waves, to understand how wind and current and tide all work together to create something bigger than their individual parts." "That sounds wonderful," Victoria said softly. "I've been around boats my entire life, but I never really understood them until recently. They were just another luxury, another status symbol." "And now?" Marcus asked. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, watching the play of light on the water below. "Now I see them as possibilities. Ways to explore, to discover, to push boundaries while respecting the environment that makes it all possible." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Richard, who emerged onto the observation deck carrying a bottle of champagne and 3 glasses. His expression was one of barely contained excitement, and Marcus immediately sensed that something significant had happened. "I just received a call from the EMSA," Richard announced, setting down the glasses and beginning to work the cork from the champagne bottle. "They've agreed to provide additional funding for the Aurora project, and they want to fast-track the approval process for commercial applications." The cork popped with a satisfying sound, and Richard quickly filled the 3 glasses with bubbling champagne. They're also interested in having the Aurora serve as the flagship for a new international initiative promoting sustainable maritime technology. Marcus accepted his glass with hands that trembled slightly. The implications were staggering. Not only would they have the resources needed to build the Aurora, but its success could influence maritime policy across the European Union and beyond. "There's more," Richard continued, his smile growing wider. "Several major yacht manufacturers have expressed interest in licensing our technology for their own vessels. We're talking about potential revenues that could fund research and development for decades." Victoria raised her glass, her eyes shining with excitement. "To the Aurora, and to the man who's going to make it possible." "To partnership," Marcus replied, touching his glass to both of theirs. "And to proving that innovation and environmental responsibility can go hand in hand." As they sipped their champagne and watched the sun paint the harbor in shades of gold and crimson, Marcus felt a profound sense of gratitude for the unlikely chain of events that had brought him to this moment. The desperate man who had approached the Serafina months earlier could never have imagined the opportunities that lay ahead. But even as he savored the moment, Marcus was aware of the enormous challenges that awaited them. Building the Aurora would require pushing multiple technologies to their limits, coordinating complex international partnerships, and maintaining the delicate balance between innovation and practicality that separated successful engineering projects from expensive failures. The next morning brought the first meeting of the Aurora development team, a diverse group of specialists that Richard had assembled from across Europe and North America. The conference room buzzed with excitement as naval architects, systems engineers, environmental scientists, and software developers reviewed the preliminary designs and discussed their respective contributions to the project. Dr. Sarah Chen, the lead programmer from the original Poseidon project, had agreed to join the team as head of software development. Her reunion with Marcus was emotional, both of them acutely aware of how much their lives had changed since their last collaboration. She had spent the intervening years working for various tech companies, but the opportunity to complete the work they had started together proved irresistible. "The control systems will be exponentially more complex than anything we developed for Poseidon," Sarah explained to the assembled team. We're not just managing propulsion anymore. We're coordinating power generation, consumption, and storage across multiple systems, while optimizing for efficiency, performance, and environmental impact. Marcus nodded, studying the software architecture diagrams Sarah had prepared. The artificial intelligence components are particularly ambitious. We're essentially asking the boat to make real-time decisions about energy allocation based on weather conditions, navigation requirements, and passenger preferences. Can it be done? Asked Dr. James Morrison, the team's naval architect and a veteran of several cutting-edge yacht projects. Theoretically, yes, Sarah replied, but it will require processing power and programming sophistication that pushes the boundaries of current marine applications. Victoria, who had been taking detailed notes throughout the meeting, looked up from her tablet. What about reliability? Our clients expect their yachts to function flawlessly in all conditions, not experience software crashes or system failures. That's the crucial challenge, Marcus agreed. We need to build redundancy into every system while maintaining the integration that makes the Aurora unique. It's like designing a symphony where every instrument can play independently if necessary, but the real magic happens when they all work together. The technical discussions continued throughout the day, with each team member contributing expertise and raising questions that would need to be addressed during the development process. By evening, they had outlined a development timeline that was ambitious but achievable, assuming no major setbacks or unforeseen complications. As the team members departed for their respective hotels, Victoria lingered in the conference room with Marcus, reviewing the notes and diagrams that covered every available surface. Her enthusiasm for the project was evident, but Marcus could also sense underlying concerns that she hadn't voiced during the formal meetings. "What's troubling you?" he asked gently, settling into a chair across from her. Victoria set down her pen and looked out through the conference room windows at the lights beginning to twinkle across the harbor. "I keep thinking about what happens if we fail. Not just for us, but for everyone who's counting on this technology to make a difference." Marcus understood her concern. The Aurora had become more than just a prototype. It was a symbol of what was possible when engineering excellence was applied to environmental challenges. Its failure would represent a setback not just for their company, but for the broader movement towards sustainable maritime technology. "Failure is always a possibility," Marcus said thoughtfully, "but so is success beyond our wildest expectations. The key is to focus on doing everything we can to maximize our chances of achieving what we've set out to accomplish." "How do you stay so calm about it?" Victoria asked. "The pressure is enormous, and there are so many variables beyond our control." Marcus smiled, thinking of Sofia waiting for him at home, probably working on homework or drawing pictures of the boats she hoped to help design someday. "I learned a long time ago that the most important things in life are worth taking risks for." The Aurora represents an opportunity to create something meaningful, something that could benefit future generations. That's worth whatever anxiety comes with the territory. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Richard, who had been meeting with potential investors and strategic partners throughout the day. His expression was pleased but tired, suggesting that the discussions had been productive but demanding. "Excellent news," he announced, loosening his tie and settling into a chair. "I've secured commitments from 3 major European shipyards to provide construction support for the Aurora. We'll have access to the most advanced facilities on the continent." Marcus felt a surge of excitement mixed with renewed awareness of the project's scope. Working with multiple shipyards would provide incredible resources and expertise, but it would also add layers of complexity to coordination and quality control. "Which yards?" Victoria asked, already thinking about logistics and scheduling. "Bonatti in Italy for the hull and superstructure, Lursen in Germany for the interior fit-out, and Feedship in the Netherlands for final systems integration and testing," Richard replied. "Each one brings specific expertise that matches different aspects of the Aurora's requirements." The prestige of the shipyards was impressive, but Marcus was more interested in their technical capabilities. Each yard had extensive experience with luxury yacht construction, but the Aurora would challenge them to work with technologies and integration requirements unlike anything in their previous experience. "We'll need to establish clear communication protocols," Marcus observed. "With teams working in 3 different countries, coordination becomes critical to maintaining quality and meeting our timeline." "Already considered," Richard replied with satisfaction. "We'll have project managers stationed at each facility, And we're setting up secure communication networks that will allow real-time collaboration between teams. As they discussed the complex logistics of international yacht construction, Marcus found himself amazed by the scale of what they were attempting. The Aurora project involved dozens of companies, hundreds of specialists, and millions of euros in investment, all coordinated toward the goal of creating a single vessel that would demonstrate the potential of sustainable maritime technology. The months that followed passed in a blur of technical meetings, design reviews, and problem-solving sessions that stretched late into the night. Marcus found himself traveling constantly between Monaco, Italy, Germany, and the Netherlands, overseeing different aspects of the Aurora's development, while maintaining overall coordination of the technical teams. Sofia adapted to her father's increased travel schedule with characteristic resilience, often joining him for dinner via video call when he was away and sharing updates about her school projects and new friendships. Her enthusiasm for his work was infectious, and Marcus often found himself explaining complex engineering concepts in terms an 8-year-old could understand, a process that sometimes revealed new insights about the problems he was trying to solve. Victoria proved to be an invaluable partner throughout the development process, her combination of technical understanding and business acumen allowing her to navigate challenges that might have derailed a purely engineering-focused approach. She had developed genuine expertise in marine systems, but more importantly, she understood how to communicate the Aurora's capabilities to investors, regulators, and potential clients. The first major milestone came when the hull was completed at the Benetti facility in Italy. Marcus and Victoria traveled to Livorno for the launch ceremony, where the Aurora's sleek white form touched water for the first time. The event was relatively modest, attended primarily by the construction teams and a few key stakeholders, but Marcus felt profound emotion as he watched the vessel settle into her natural element. "She's beautiful," Victoria said softly, standing beside him as the Aurora floated in the harbor, her graceful lines perfectly complemented by the golden light of the Italian afternoon. Marcus nodded, unable to trust his voice as he watched sunlight dance across the hull he had helped design. The Aurora represented thousands of hours of work, countless technical challenges overcome, and the dreams of everyone involved in her creation. But more than that, she embodied hope for a different kind of relationship between human ambition and environmental stewardship. The subsequent months brought the Aurora to Germany for interior construction and systems installation. The Lursen facility was a marvel of precision engineering, where craftsmen worked alongside advanced robotics to create interiors that balanced luxury with functional efficiency. Marcus spent long days overseeing the installation of the hybrid propulsion systems, working closely with technicians to ensure that every component met the exacting specifications required for optimal performance. The complexity of the Aurora's systems was staggering. The hybrid propulsion alone involved 3 separate engine types, sophisticated power management computers, and environmental monitoring equipment that provided real-time feedback on everything from fuel consumption to water quality impact. Add in the yacht's advanced navigation systems, luxury amenities, and safety equipment, and the result was a floating demonstration of human technological achievement. But with complexity came vulnerability. As systems testing began, numerous small problems emerged that required creative solutions and sometimes complete redesign of supposedly finalized components. Marcus found himself working 18-hour days, troubleshooting integration issues that threatened to delay the project or compromise its performance goals. Victoria remained a constant source of support throughout the most challenging phases, often arriving with coffee and encouragement when Marcus was on the verge of exhaustion. Her presence provided stability and perspective that helped him maintain focus on the larger objectives even when immediate problems seemed overwhelming. "Remember why we're doing this?" she would say during particularly difficult moments. "The Aurora isn't just about proving our technology works. She's about demonstrating that luxury and environmental responsibility can coexist, that we don't have to choose between human desires and planetary stewardship." Her words invariably restored Marcus's sense of purpose, reminding him that their work had implications far beyond the success or failure of a single yacht. The Aurora was a symbol of possibility, a demonstration that human ingenuity could be applied to creating solutions rather than simply exploiting resources. The final phase of construction took place at the feedship facility in the Netherlands, where all of the Aurora's systems would be integrated and tested under real-world conditions. This was the most critical phase of the project, where theoretical designs would either prove themselves or reveal fundamental flaws that could force major revisions. Marcus arrived in the Netherlands carrying detailed testing protocols and contingency plans for dozens of potential problems. The next few weeks would determine whether 18 months of intensive development had produced a revolutionary advancement in maritime technology or an expensive demonstration of overambitious engineering. The North Sea churned with November fury as the Aurora cut through 12-foot swells with remarkable grace, her hybrid engines humming in perfect synchronization while onboard computers continuously adjusted power distribution to optimize both performance and efficiency. Marcus stood in the vessel's state-of-the-art bridge, watching real-time data streams that confirmed what his instruments had been telling him for the past 6 hours. Every system was performing beyond their most optimistic projections. 3 representatives from the European Maritime Safety Agency observed from the navigation station their earlier skepticism replaced by obvious amazement as they witnessed the Aurora's capabilities firsthand. Dr. Elena Rossetti, the EMSA's chief technology officer, had been particularly vocal about her doubts regarding the hybrid propulsion system's reliability in harsh conditions. Now she stared at the environmental impact readings with undisguised wonder. "Fuel consumption is 63% below comparable vessels," she murmured, consulting her tablet for the 3rd time in as many minutes. "Carbon emissions are virtually negligible, and the water displacement efficiency is extraordinary." Marcus nodded, though his attention remained focused on the subtle vibrations that told him more about the Aurora's condition than any digital readout. The vessel felt alive beneath his feet, responding to wind and wave with the fluid adaptability that distinguished truly exceptional maritime engineering from merely competent craftsmanship. Victoria emerged from the lower deck, where she had been monitoring the passenger comfort systems during the challenging sea trial. Her hair was slightly disheveled from the wind, but her eyes blazed with triumph as she approached Marcus with a tablet displaying passenger compartment data. "The stabilization systems are performing flawlessly," she reported, her voice carrying over the sound of wind and waves. "Passengers in the main salon are experiencing less than 2 degrees of roll motion, even in these conditions." The achievement was remarkable, considering that conventional yachts of comparable size would be subjecting their occupants to significantly more motion in such weather. The Aurora's advanced gyroscopic stabilization, combined with her revolutionary hull design, created an island of calm within the storm's fury. Captain Eric Lindquist, the veteran mariner Richard had hired to oversee the sea trials, approached from the helm with the satisfied expression of someone whose professional expectations had been thoroughly exceeded. His 40 years of experience with luxury vessels had made him initially cautious about the Aurora's unconventional systems, but the yacht's performance had won his complete confidence. "Dr. Rivera, I've never experienced anything like this," he admitted, his Norwegian accent lending gravity to his words. "The Aurora handles like a vessel half her size, while maintaining the stability of something twice as large. It's as if she anticipates the sea's movements." Marcus felt a surge of pride mixed with profound relief. The months of intensive development, the countless technical challenges overcome, the sleepless nights spent refining control algorithms, all of it had culminated in this moment of validation. The Aurora wasn't just functional, she was exceptional. Dr. Rossetti approached with her colleagues, their clipboards and tablets forgotten as they struggled to process what they had witnessed. "Dr. Rivera, we need to discuss the implications of what we've seen today. This technology could revolutionize not just luxury yachting, but commercial maritime operations on a global scale." The magnitude of her statement wasn't lost on Marcus. From the beginning, the Aurora had been conceived as more than just a prototype. She was a proof of concept for sustainable maritime technology that could be scaled and adapted for vessels ranging from private yachts to commercial cargo ships. The hybrid propulsion system could reduce the maritime industry's carbon footprint by 30% or more, Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the excitement building in his chest. "And that's just the beginning. The environmental monitoring systems could help prevent pollution incidents, while the efficiency improvements would make sustainable operation economically attractive." As the Aurora continued her sea trial, cutting through the storm with effortless power, Marcus found himself thinking about the journey that had brought him to this moment. Less than 2 years ago, he had been a desperate man in coveralls, begging for work to feed his daughter. Now he stood on the bridge of a revolutionary yacht that could change the course of an entire industry. The irony wasn't lost on him that Victoria, who had once mocked his appearance and circumstances, had become not just a collaborator but a genuine friend, whose insights and support had been crucial to the Aurora's success. The transformation in their relationship mirrored the vessel's own evolution, from ambitious concept to technological triumph. As afternoon faded into evening and the storm began to subside, Captain Lindquist guided the Aurora toward the sheltered waters of Bergen Harbor, where a crowd of maritime industry representatives waited to witness their return. Word of the sea trial's success had spread quickly through professional networks, and the dock was lined with naval architects, yacht designers, and marine engineers eager to see the vessel that had performed so remarkably in challenging conditions. The Aurora's approach to the harbor was itself a demonstration of her advanced capabilities. The hybrid propulsion system seamlessly transitioned from high-speed operation to precision maneuvering, while the computerized navigation systems calculated optimal approach angles that minimized wake and environmental impact. Even her docking was elegant, with thrusters and engines working in perfect coordination to bring her smoothly alongside the pier. Richard Ashworth waited on the dock with Sofia, who had flown to Norway with her father's employer to witness this crucial milestone. The 8-year-old's eyes were wide with amazement as she took in the Aurora's sleek lines and obvious technological sophistication. For her, this wasn't just a successful sea trial. It was validation of her father's work and a glimpse of the future they were building together. "Papa," Sofia called out as Marcus disembarked, running to embrace him with the unconscious confidence of a child who knew she was deeply loved. "Did everything work the way you planned?" Marcus lifted her easily, marveling at how much she had grown during the months of intensive development work. "Better than I planned, sweetheart." The Aurora exceeded all our expectations. Victoria joined them on the dock, her professional composure softening as she watched the reunion between father and daughter. Over the months of working together, she had developed genuine affection for Sofia, often bringing small gifts from her travels and taking genuine interest in the girl's school projects and ambitions. "Your father created something extraordinary," Victoria told Sofia, her voice warm with sincere admiration. "The Aurora isn't just a beautiful yacht. She's a glimpse of what's possible when brilliant engineering meets environmental consciousness." Richard approached with a delegation of maritime industry officials, including several representatives from major European shipyards and the head of the International Maritime Organization's Environmental Protection Committee. Their expressions ranged from curious to amazed, and Marcus could sense the excitement building as they prepared to tour the vessel that had generated so much professional interest. "Gentlemen, ladies," Richard announced to the assembled group, "I present the Aurora, the world's first fully integrated hybrid luxury yacht. Dr. Rivera will be conducting tours of her technical systems, and I believe you'll find her capabilities quite remarkable." The next several hours passed in a blur of technical demonstrations and detailed explanations as Marcus guided groups of experts through the Aurora's innovative systems. The hybrid propulsion drew particular attention, with marine engineers studying the seamless integration of diesel, electric, and solar power generation. The environmental monitoring systems impressed the regulatory officials, while the luxury amenities satisfied those concerned about passenger comfort and commercial viability. Dr. Sarah Chen joined the technical discussions, explaining the artificial intelligence systems that managed the Aurora's complex operations. Her software had evolved far beyond the original Poseidon project, incorporating machine learning algorithms that allowed the yacht to continuously optimize her performance based on operating conditions and usage patterns. "The Aurora learns from every voyage," Sarah explained to a fascinated audience of software engineers and naval architects. "She adapts to weather patterns, passenger preferences, and operational requirements, becoming more efficient and responsive over time." The implications were staggering. A yacht that could improve her own performance, reduce environmental impact through intelligent operation, and provide increasingly personalized service to her passengers represented a fundamental shift in maritime technology. The Aurora wasn't just a vessel, she was a platform for continuous innovation and improvement. As the evening progressed and the technical tours concluded, Marcus found himself standing alone on the Aurora's aft deck, looking out over Bergen's historic harbor. The lights of the city reflected on the water's surface, creating patterns that shifted and danced with each gentle wave. The storm had passed completely, leaving behind the kind of crisp, clean air that made the Norwegian coastline famous among mariners. Victoria joined him at the railing, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the satisfied expression of someone whose professional gamble had paid off spectacularly. The day's success had validated not just the Aurora's technology, but her own transformation, from privileged observer to genuine contributor to meaningful work. The industry representatives are calling it revolutionary, she reported, settling beside Marcus with obvious contentment. 3 shipyards have already expressed interest in licensing the hybrid propulsion technology, and the EMSA wants to fast-track approval for commercial applications. Marcus nodded, though his thoughts were focused less on commercial success than on the broader implications of what they had achieved. The Aurora represented proof that luxury and environmental responsibility could coexist, that human desires for beauty and comfort didn't have to come at the expense of planetary stewardship. "What happens now?" Victoria asked, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty that suggested she was thinking beyond immediate commercial opportunities. "Now we change the world," Marcus replied quietly, his gaze fixed on the horizon where stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "The Aurora is just the beginning. Imagine cargo ships with hybrid propulsion, cruise vessels with environmental monitoring, fishing fleets that can operate sustainably. The technology we've developed here could transform the entire maritime industry." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Sofia, who had spent the evening exploring the Aurora's passenger areas with the boundless curiosity of childhood. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she joined them at the railing, though Marcus could see the fatigue that suggested she was ready for sleep. "Papa, will you build more boats like this?" she asked, leaning against his side with the easy affection that never failed to warm his heart. "I hope so, sweetheart," Marcus replied, wrapping his arm around her small shoulders. "The Aurora has shown us what's possible. Now we need to share that possibility with the world." Richard appeared from the main salon, his phone pressed to his ear as he concluded what sounded like an important conversation. His expression was one of barely contained excitement, and Marcus immediately sensed that something significant had developed. "That was the Minister of Maritime Affairs," Richard announced, ending his call and approaching their small group. "The Norwegian government wants to order 6 Aurora-class vessels for their coastal patrol service. They're offering to fund a complete production facility in exchange for exclusive access to the technology for government applications." The offer was staggering in its implications. Government backing would provide the resources needed to scale production, while validating the Aurora's technology at the highest levels of maritime authority. More importantly, it would demonstrate that sustainable maritime technology could serve practical, as well as luxury applications. "There's more," Richard continued, his smile growing wider. "The European Union is considering a mandate requiring all new luxury vessels over 75 feet to meet environmental standards that only our hybrid technology can currently achieve. The Aurora hasn't just succeeded, she's positioned to become the standard for an entire industry." Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a familiar coat. Success brought opportunities, but it also brought obligations to use those opportunities wisely. The Aurora's technology represented power to influence the future of maritime transportation, and with that power came the duty to ensure it served humanity's broader interests. The following months unfolded with breathtaking speed, as the Aurora's success opened doors that had seemed permanently closed just years earlier. Marcus found himself traveling constantly, consulting with shipyards, government agencies, and environmental organizations about implementing hybrid propulsion technology across a wide range of maritime applications. The production facility in Norway became reality with remarkable efficiency, its construction overseen by Victoria while Marcus focused on refining the technology for mass production. The facility represented a new model for maritime manufacturing, with environmental sustainability built into every aspect of its operation. Solar panels powered the assembly lines, waste heat was captured and recycled, and the facility's own harbor used Aurora-class vessels for all transportation needs. Sofia adapted to her father's increased prominence with characteristic resilience, though Marcus was careful to maintain their close relationship despite his demanding schedule. She often accompanied him on business trips during school holidays, her presence serving as both grounding influence and reminder of what truly mattered in life. The girl's own interests had evolved as she witnessed her father's work, and she had begun expressing serious interest in marine biology and environmental science. Marcus encouraged her curiosity while being careful not to pressure her toward any particular career path. Whatever she chose to do with her life, he wanted it to be driven by genuine passion rather than family expectations. Victoria's role had also evolved as the company expanded to meet growing demand for Aurora-class technology. She had become Marcus's primary business partner, her combination of technical understanding and commercial acumen making her invaluable in negotiations with potential clients and strategic partners. More importantly, their professional relationship had deepened into genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared commitment to their environmental mission. The Aurora herself had become something of a celebrity in maritime circles, frequently featured in industry publications, and serving as a floating ambassador for sustainable technology. Her original purpose as a prototype had expanded to include demonstration voyages for potential clients, educational tours for students and professionals, and research missions that gathered data on ocean health and maritime environmental impact. One particularly memorable voyage took the Aurora through the Mediterranean to document the effects of shipping pollution on marine ecosystems. The data they collected provided compelling evidence for the need for cleaner maritime technology, while the voyage itself demonstrated the Aurora's ability to operate with minimal environmental impact, even in heavily trafficked waters. The success had personal dimensions as well. Marcus's relationship with Victoria had evolved beyond professional partnership, though both were careful to maintain appropriate boundaries given their working relationship and the complexity of their respective circumstances. Their mutual attraction was obvious to those who knew them well, but both seemed content to let their connection develop naturally without forcing premature declarations or commitments. Sofia had noticed the growing closeness between her father and Victoria, occasionally making observations with the directness that only children could manage. "Victoria makes you happy, Papa," she had said one evening as they walked along Monaco's harbor. "Different happy than work makes you happy." Marcus had been unsure how to respond to his daughter's insight, partly because she was absolutely correct. Victoria did make him happy in ways that had nothing to do with professional success or technological achievement. Her presence brought lightness to his life, laughter that had been missing since Elena's death, and the possibility of companionship beyond the responsibilities of single parenthood. The opportunity for deeper conversation came during a quiet evening aboard the Aurora, as she rested in Monaco's harbor between demonstration voyages. Marcus and Victoria found themselves alone on the upper deck, watching the lights of the city reflect on the water while Sofia slept in one of the guest cabins below. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" Victoria asked, her voice carrying the thoughtful tone that had become familiar during their late-night planning sessions. Marcus considered the question carefully. Their professional success had exceeded his wildest dreams, but personal happiness remained more complicated. "I think about Sofia growing up, about the impact our technology might have on future generations. Beyond that, I try to focus on the present." Victoria nodded, understanding the cautious approach that loss had taught him. "I've been thinking about legacy lately. Not just business legacy, but personal legacy. What we leave behind that actually matters." "Your work on the Aurora will influence maritime technology for decades," Marcus observed. "That's a significant legacy by any measure." "I was thinking of something more personal," Victoria replied, her green eyes meeting his directly. "Something that involves the people we care about, the relationships that give meaning to professional success." The conversation that followed was gentle and honest, both of them acknowledging the attraction and affection that had grown between them while being realistic about the complexities involved. They were partners in work that demanded extensive travel and long hours. Both carried responsibilities that couldn't be ignored, and Marcus had the additional consideration of Sofia's emotional well-being. But they were also two people who had found in each other something rare and valuable: genuine understanding, mutual respect, and the kind of companionship that enhanced rather than complicated their individual lives. By the end of the evening, they had agreed to let their relationship develop naturally, without artificial timeline or predetermined outcomes. The decision proved wise as subsequent months brought them closer together through shared challenges and successes. Victoria became a regular presence in Marcus and Sofia's life, her involvement feeling natural rather than forced. She attended Sofia's school events when Marcus was traveling, helped with homework that challenged even his engineering background, and gradually became the kind of presence that made their small family feel more complete. Sofia's acceptance of Victoria was perhaps the most telling indicator of the relationship's authenticity. Children had an instinct for detecting false sentiment, but Sofia responded to Victoria with genuine affection that couldn't be manufactured or coerced. Their bond developed independently of Marcus's feelings, based on Victoria's sincere interest in Sofia's thoughts and dreams. The Aurora program's success continued to exceed all projections. Orders for hybrid propulsion systems came from yacht manufacturers across Europe and North America, while government agencies expressed interest in applying the technology to Coast Guard vessels, research ships, and other specialized applications. The environmental monitoring systems found additional markets in commercial shipping, where companies sought to demonstrate their commitment to sustainable operations. Marcus found himself at the center of a transformation that extended far beyond maritime technology. The Aurora had become a symbol of what was possible when human ingenuity was applied to environmental challenges, rather than simply exploiting natural resources. Speaking engagements at universities and professional conferences allowed him to advocate for sustainable engineering approaches across multiple industries. The personal rewards were equally significant. Marcus's work provided financial security that allowed Sofia to pursue any educational opportunities she desired, while his professional reputation opened doors that had seemed permanently closed during his years of struggle. More importantly, he had found work that aligned with his deepest values, creating technology that served both human needs and environmental protection. The culmination came 2 years after the Aurora's successful sea trial, when Marcus received notification that he had been selected for the International Maritime Prize, the industry's highest honor for contributions to maritime technology and safety. The award recognized not just his technical achievements, but the broader impact of his work on sustainable ocean transportation. The ceremony took place in London, with representatives from maritime organizations worldwide gathering to celebrate achievements that advanced the industry's knowledge and capabilities. Marcus sat in the audience, with Victoria and Sofia, still somewhat amazed by the journey that had brought him from desperate poverty to international recognition. When his name was announced as the prize recipient, the applause was sustained and genuine, reflecting the maritime community's appreciation for work that transcended narrow commercial interests. Marcus's acceptance speech focused not on his personal achievements, but on the collaborative nature of technological progress and the responsibility that came with innovation. The Aurora represents what becomes possible when we align human creativity with environmental stewardship, he told the assembled audience. Our oceans face unprecedented challenges, but they also offer unprecedented opportunities for those willing to pursue solutions rather than simply accepting problems as inevitable. After the ceremony, as the three of them walked along the Thames in the evening light, Sofia took her father's hand with the unconscious confidence of a child who knew she was unconditionally loved. "Are you famous now, Papa?" Marcus laughed, squeezing her small hand gently. "Not famous, sweetheart. Just grateful for the opportunity to do meaningful work with people I care about." Victoria walked beside them, her own thoughts focused on the future they were building together. The Aurora had been just the beginning, a proof of concept that had opened doors to possibilities none of them had imagined. But the real achievement wasn't technological. It was the demonstration that success could serve purposes larger than individual ambition. As they crossed Westminster Bridge with London's lights reflecting in the river below, Marcus felt the profound satisfaction that came from knowing his work mattered. The desperate man who had once cleaned floors in Monaco's train station could never have imagined the opportunities that lay ahead, but that same man's determination to provide for his daughter had carried them both to this moment of quiet triumph. The Aurora floated peacefully in Monaco's harbor, her sleek silhouette, a testament to the power of innovation guided by purpose. She had proven that luxury and environmental responsibility could coexist, that human desires for beauty and performance didn't require the sacrifice of planetary stewardship. More than a yacht, she had become a symbol of possibility, a glimpse of the future that human ingenuity could create when applied to the right challenges. Marcus, Victoria, and Sofia stood together on Westminster Bridge, three people whose lives had been transformed by a yacht that nobody could fix, until the right person came along with the right combination of knowledge, determination, and hope. The future stretched before them like an uncharted ocean, full of possibilities waiting to be explored by those brave enough to set sail toward new horizons. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.